Long before Rome became the dominant power of Italy, the peoples of Latium were united by a loose political and religious alliance known as the Latin League. Rather than being a centralized state, the League was a federation of independent Latin cities that shared a common language, culture, and religious traditions. It existed to promote mutual defense, settle disputes, and strengthen cooperation among neighboring communities. For centuries, it served as one of the most influential political organizations in central Italy, shaping the environment from which Rome itself emerged. The origins of the Latin League remain partly obscured by legend and archaeology, but most historians believe it developed sometime between the 8th and 7th centuries BC. During this period, dozens of Latin settlements were scattered across the fertile plains of Latium. These communities faced constant threats from neighboring peoples, including the Etruscans to the north, the Volsci and Aequi to the east and south, and occasionally other Italic tribes. Cooperation became a practical necessity, leading the cities to form an alliance that balanced independence with collective security. According to Roman tradition, the League originally consisted of 30 Latin cities, although the exact membership changed over time, and many of these settlements have never been positively identified. Important members included Alba Longa, Tusculum, Aricia, Lanuvium, Tibur, Praeneste, and eventually Rome itself. While no single city permanently dominated the alliance during its early history, prestige often shifted depending on military success and political influence. Religion formed the heart of the League's identity. Representatives from the member cities gathered annually at the sanctuary of Jupiter Latiaris on Mons Albanus, today's Alban Hills. These religious festivals, known as the Feriae Latinae, celebrated the shared ancestry of the Latin peoples. Sacrifices, feasts, and political discussions took place during these gatherings, reinforcing the idea that despite political divisions, all Latins belonged to a common cultural family. Participation in these ceremonies symbolized membership within the League and strengthened diplomatic ties among its cities. Rome's relationship with the Latin League evolved dramatically over time. In its earliest years, Rome was simply one member among many Latin communities. Roman tradition even claimed that the city's legendary kings maintained close relations with neighboring Latin settlements through diplomacy, warfare, and intermarriage. However, as Rome expanded its population and military strength during the 6th and 5th centuries BC, it increasingly sought a leadership role within the alliance, creating tensions with other Latin cities determined to preserve their independence. One of the defining moments in the League's history came after the Battle of Lake Regillus, traditionally dated to around 496 BC. According to Roman accounts, Rome defeated a coalition of Latin cities supported by the exiled Roman king Tarquinius Superbus. Although the historical details remain debated, the conflict eventually led to the Foedus Cassianum, a treaty concluded in 493 BC between Rome and the Latin League. This agreement established a military alliance based on mutual defense, equal sharing of conquered territory, and coordinated military campaigns against common enemies. For nearly a century, the Foedus Cassianum created a relatively stable partnership between Rome and the other Latin cities. Roman and Latin armies fought together against powerful adversaries such as the Aequi, Volsci, and Sabines. This cooperation not only protected Latium from external threats, but also allowed Rome to gain valuable military experience, expand its political influence, and develop the administrative skills that would later support its growing empire. As Rome's power continued to increase during the 4th century BC, the balance within the alliance gradually disappeared. Roman victories over neighboring peoples brought wealth, manpower, and territory, while many Latin cities became increasingly dependent on Roman military leadership. What had once been an alliance of relatively equal partners slowly transformed into a relationship in which Rome dictated policy. This growing inequality caused resentment among many Latin communities that still valued their traditional autonomy. The mounting tensions eventually erupted into the Latin War between 340 and 338 BC. Several members of the Latin League rebelled, demanding equal political rights and a greater voice within the alliance. Rome responded with overwhelming military force, defeating the coalition in a series of decisive battles. The Roman victory fundamentally reshaped central Italy and marked the end of the Latin League as an independent political organization. Rather than preserving the League, Rome dissolved it entirely after the war. Individual Latin cities received different settlements depending on their loyalty during the conflict. Some communities were granted partial or full Roman citizenship, others became self-governing allies under Roman supervision, and a few lost territory or political privileges. By treating each city separately, rather than allowing them to remain united, Rome prevented future collective resistance and greatly strengthened its control over Latium. Although the Latin League disappeared, its legacy endured throughout Roman history. The alliance had fostered centuries of cooperation among the Latin peoples, spread common religious traditions, and helped preserve the Latin language that would later become one of history's most influential tongues. More importantly, Rome learned valuable lessons about diplomacy, coalition warfare, and regional administration while participating in the League. These experiences helped shape the political strategies that eventually enabled Rome to unite Italy and build one of the greatest empires the ancient world had ever seen.